What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the 2006 mixtape by Ludacris. Basically, this project is called Pre-Release Therapy, and it came out in the late summer of 2006. And the thing about this particular project is it's actually a double mixtape, so it has two discs. This mixtape has two discs towards it, so I'm going to get to the other disc later, I would have to say. So basically, we're just going to review disc one. I would have to say about this particular project, this is actually a pretty heralded mixtape here. I would have to say this is probably one of Ludacris's best projects overall, I'd have to say. Definitely one of his best mixtapes. Probably better. Definitely better than Conjure in the preview and some of those type ones, I'd have to say, and probably a little bit better. Probably also better than Disturbing the Trap, some of those type ones. I just would have to say that there's just a certain amount of polish on this particular project that Ludacris had when he was in his complete prime in 2004, 5, and 6, some of those type pitches. Some of Ludacris's best projects, in my opinion, would be like the Red Light District, Word of Mouth, and then Release Therapy. Those are definitely some of his best ones, but I would have to say this mixtape is on par with some of those. Definitely going to get a pretty rave score, I'd have to say. It's overall appreciated the concept. Now, there are some new songs on here, and I'm pretty certain that there are some new songs on disc 2 also, I'd have to say, but the concept about it is the songs that Ludacris chose to rap over in terms of the freestyles on this particular project are pretty awesome, I'd have to say. They're just pretty excellent overall. He raps to like he does like clips as Mr. Me Too on here. He does Dem Franchise Boys as Lean With It, Rock With It, which is pretty superb just to get Ludacris tearing up that particular song, I'd have to say. He does like Shoulder Lean on here. He does a few other ones. He does You Don't Know off of Jay-Z's The Blueprint. So there are some pretty super stellar ones on this particular project, I'd have to say. Some other ones like Chevy Riding High by Rick Ross, Cannon by the DJ Drama album, The Cannon Beat, which is by Don Cannon, which is on DJ Drama's album, I'd have to say. So there's just a good stellar amount of ones on here. There's one with Play a Circle, I'd have to say. He does You Dig by Young Jeezy off of his Can't Ban the Snowman mixtape. So there's just a good assortment. I really appreciated the choices that Ludacris had. This is just Ludacris in his complete prime as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just a lot of good stellar stuff to kind of get on here. Plus some of these new songs. I mean, not every single new song particularly kind of hits, but it's just kind of some offhanded type ones. I wasn't expecting some of these productions that were kind of on here. I like the fact that Shakedown was a pretty highlighted beat. This is probably the best beat on the whole mixtape. I'd have to suppose that's not from another project or from another artist, I'd have to say. I would also say that Gangsta Niggas is a pretty nice one. And then Rob the Roberts is a pretty nice one as well. Those are just some nice ones. But the concept about it is there are a couple of poor songs on here. I mean, for the most part, there's minimal to complain about on this particular project just because it has so much heralded fare on it. It's just Ludacris in his prime. He's got lyrical barbs left and right. He just really does it and nails this particular pitch. Just him on like his southern rap type. Just him on like his southern swag and southern prime as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. This is before like the preview of 2008 and this is before Ludacris started being a little bit tamer just within his approach. I mean, he wasn't tame in terms of lyricism, but he just kind of calmed down in terms of like his riotousness as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. So it's just some good concepts to particularly kind of get some of these, I would have to say. But basically, out of 22 songs on this particular mixtape, which narrowing the outro, I would say narrowing the intro and outro and like the interludes, that narrows it down to 17 songs, I would have to suppose. And out of those 17, I wound up recommending to you 13. So it's actually quite a bit. So we're going to get to some of these. I'll go ahead and recommend these particular songs. There's not a single on here. This is back in the days where there were just more mixtape type fare and just less of kind of like, it was kind of less in the days of mixtape promotion, just more kind of in the just more of like the concept of the mixtape helping out your album and some of those type pitches as far as like Lil Wayne and folks like that were kind of doing back in those days, Young Buck and some of those type folks, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept to get some of these, but we'll go ahead and recommend these 13 songs. The 13 songs I would recommend would just be the 13 songs I would recommend would be I'm the Truth, You Don't Know, Superstar Boy, Jump Off the G4, Cannon, Large Amounts, Shakedown, Piggyback, Just Bought, Duffel Bag Boys, Rob the Robbers, In the Ghetto Remix, and Gangsta Niggas. So talk about some of these. Basically, Large Amounts is kind of an almost song just because it's already on the Red Light District from 2004. I'd have to say it's just kind of a leftover cut to get off that particular project, but it is a pretty good song. It has some good lyricism on there. It's pretty simplified on that particular song, but still a pretty good concept to get that one on there. It's kind of a here and there type song, but it is basically on the Red Light District, so I would still recommend just purchasing that album because that's one of Ludacris's best, I'd have to say. Then the 4 songs that are new songs that I recommend, most of these are just freestyles to other instrumentals and stuff. They do have some folks on here like 2 Chainz and Dollar Boy are on this particular project on Duffel Bag Boys. Pretty good concept to get that particular one. I-20 is on here a couple times. Young Buck's on here. He lays a verse. Scarface is on here. So there are some folks, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of these songs I do recommend that are new. So basically those 4 songs would be Shakedown, Rob the Robbers, In the Ghetto Remix, and Gangsta Niggas. Basically those are the new ones. There are some other new songs on here like Coochie Bangin' with Old Dirty Bastard. Didn't recommend that one. And there's a song with Jadakiss on here that I didn't recommend either. And then there's a song with there's a song called He-Man, which unfortunately I didn't recommend. That seemed like that would have been a dope one, but I didn't recommend it. So that's kind of the concept. But to talk about some of these ones I do recommend on here that are new songs. Basically, Shakedown is like a summery kind of syrupy Middle Eastern bop. I'd have to say pretty offhanded gem from Luda. I would definitely have to suppose, but this song does some real good lyrical damage. I'd have to say. So this is a dope concept. Just getting this particular one. So this is a dope concept getting this particular one. This is a pretty highlighted Neptune's beat, and this is definitely one of the best beats on the whole tape. I'd have to suppose just a real kind of syrupy, just hypnotic kind of Middle Eastern gem. I would just have to suppose really hits pretty heavily. I would definitely feel like this is a real kind of hypnotic type one that just has a lot of appeal. I'd have to say just a good offhanded one to kind of get from Ludacris. Not a typical type song that he kind of raps over, but it's kind of an original one. I don't know how many full-blown folks really know about this particular song by Ludacris. This kind of one that's way off to the wayside. It's just kind of a secret type Ludacris song. I'd have to suppose pretty good bopish type one, and it is produced by Pharrell and Chad Hugo of the Neptune, so it's a pretty good concept to get that one. Rob the Robbers is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely like a 3-6 Mafia like night. This is like a 3-6 Mafia like night ride out cut. I would definitely have to feel like, and this is a good smoke one, kind of residential gem, I'd have to say. So this is a pretty good bopish type one. This has I-20 and Young Buck on there, which is a pretty dope concept just because Ludacris and Young Buck don't have a ton of songs together as far as that pitch kind of happens with it, and I-20 didn't collaborate with Ludacris as much in like the later years, and I-20 didn't collaborate with Ludacris as much in the later years, so I'd have to say this is a pretty highlight one. This really feels like something that Juicy J would have done or DJ Paul would have done, some of those type folks as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just a great concept to kind of get some residential type night fare just within the pitch, of just like some good step out type moments just for like snackage and stuff like that. Just going to the gas station, getting like some Chex Mix, some 2 liters, some stuff like that. So just some overall good stuff, getting some shells, some swishers, some stuff like that. Just some overall good pitches, getting some of those good snack cakes and things like that. Just amongst like the particular pitch. Now Rob the Robbers obviously this is a more rugged and gutter type cut, I'd have to say, but still pretty good concept for like some snackage in like midnight fare as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some good kind of just some kind of head home and smoke a few type bops, just going to Taco Bell real late, some stuff like that I'd have. So it's a pretty good concept for that. So In the Ghetto remix is another highlighted one. This is a Busta Rhymes song. This is on his Big Bang project, but Ludacris does a pretty good job on the remix, I'd have to say. Luda definitely benefits the remix of this particular song, I would suppose. This is a good Night Travers bop, I would feel like, and this is a good Night Travers bop still, I would have to say. Either one, the original on Busta's album or this particular one, is a pretty good concept for that, and this is just a good snackage kind of boiler. So this is another highlighted one. This one's a little bit more relaxed and lambic compared to Rob the Robbers, but there's still some great concepts just for like some night fare of just like midnight snack type fare, just late night sessions and stuff like that, just some smoke sessions at like 1 a.m. and pitches like that as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some great stuff there. Ludacris drops 2 good verses on this particular song. It's just a dope concept to kind of get some of this. He really benefits this song, so it's a great concept. Gangsta Niggas is a pretty highlighted one. This is like a slinky kind of gutter trap gem, I would have to say. It's like a stellar kind of mixtape grime, I would definitely feel like, and this just has some snaring lyrics, and this is definitely a smoke something type tune, I would have to say. So this is a pretty dope one. Definitely a pretty rugged type song. Just overall, I like the concept of getting some of these type pitches. Both Ludacris and Scarface do a pretty excellent job on this particular song. It's an interesting pitch just because Scarface was kind of amidst his retirement back in 2006. So it's a good concept to kind of see him on some of those particular type songs because he didn't really do a lot in 2006. This is a dope particular song to kind of get within this pitch. But this is definitely one of the more rugged songs on the album. It's just interesting that Ludacris kind of picked some of these type ones for like some mixtape type fare, because I would have figured that he would have picked like some nightclub type songs, more like songs like Sierra's O and Ludacris, or more songs like Sierra's O and Usher's Yeah, and some of those type pitches, just some good ride out type tunes and nightclub type songs for that sort of pitch. But it's just interesting that a lot of these are just more gutter type tunes as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Some good stuff. Definitely a lot of these are just more kind of grimy type ones, just more mixtape type fare in like a more ghetto type sense. But I do like the concept of it because Ludacris does a pretty good job with like these more gutter and street type rugged type songs, I'd have to say. So it's a dope concept. But yeah, to talk about some of the songs I don't recommend on here, I'm going to talk about some of these ones I do recommend in terms of like the mixtape type fare. So definitely it's great hearing Ludacris on like Shoulder Lean. This is definitely a good night outing type fare, even despite the fact that these verses are somewhat short, I'd have to say. Still a dope concept to get some of these. Chevy Riding High is a nice one. This is a pretty good pitch to get Ludacris on. I'd have to say that like Mr. Me Too was a nice touch of one to kind of get. That's a great beat to kind of do. It's not every day that folks did that. I wish Lil Wayne would have done that particular beat. That would have been a nice one for him. I feel like the Lean With It, Rock With It beat by Dem Franchise Boys was probably one of my favorites to hear Ludacris kind of rap on. Lil Fate's on this song, which is a dope. His old time homie Lil Fate's on this particular song, which is a dope concept to kind of get him on this particular song. And then that cat from like Freaky Things at the end of that Freaky Things type song that kind of does the outro on that particular song is on here too. I don't remember his name, but it's a pretty dope concept to get that particular one. So it's a good concept to get the Disturbing the Peace crew on this particular song. I like Play a Circle on the You Dig beat. That's definitely a pretty nice one. I'm glad that Ludacris also did some mixtape type boss because that was a pretty good hit from Jeezy back in 2006, I'd have to say. So there's just some nice ones, particularly kind of on here. Just would have to say. Also, the Don Cannon beat was a pretty nice one. He eviscerated this song, Ludacris particularly did. So the thing about Ludacris on this particular project is he was completely in his prime. He was just throwing barbs left and right. Just really had a nice snaring type of appeal. Just the punchlines hit, the overall flow hit pretty heavily. Is the concept of what he did. Most of these freestyles, you wish that either the verse was longer or he had another verse on the particular song as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. It's just some prime Ludacris. It's just a great concept. This is definitely overall one of his best projects, and I hope that Disc 2 is as good as Disc 1, because I would definitely have to say this is a pretty excellent one. This is just prime Ludacris up there with the Red Light District, Release Therapy, the album, Chicken and Beer in some cases. I mean, Chicken and Beer is okay, but it has some great singles. Word of Mouth, same thing, has some excellent singles, has 5 of them, so it's a pretty good concept for some of those, but I'd have to say just an excellent concept. So talk about some of the songs I didn't recommend on here. There's just a few of these, just 4 of these I just would have to say. He-Man was just kind of a clumsy type, soulful type beat that just didn't work that well. It was trying to be like a Don Cannon type beat, but it just didn't really pull it off at all. It's kind of that one was kind of a disappointment. I was expecting that one to be a little bit better. Most of the songs I complain about on this particular project are the new songs, which is unfortunate just because Ludacris chose some offhanded kind of productions that just didn't always work. This mixtape's still going to get a pretty heralded score, I'd have to say. But yeah, motherfucker was just a clumsy David Banner type beat. Was trying to be like Friday type vibes with Chris Tucker and that sort of pitch, but it just didn't really pull it off that well. It was just kind of a clumsy type one. Didn't really nail the David Banner style that well, I'd have to say. And then Coochie Bang was a big disappointment just because Old Dirty Bastard and the Ludacris team up should have been a lot crazier just because they're both pretty wild card type individuals. But that one's just kind of a clumsy type production. It wasn't very compelling to listen to really get to. I feel like ODB could have definitely been on a pretty better song to have had just for that particular time period. I just wonder if they actually collaborated or what was the deal with that particular one, because it was just kind of a concept that needed to be far better than what it was, I'd have to say. It was this kind of thing. And the same thing with the Jadakiss collaboration. More was just one of the worst beats on the whole project, I'd have to say. Just a real disappointing type one. It was just not very stringent kind of listen to kind of get to, and just did not really have that much appeal, I'd have to suppose. So basically, 13 out of 17 songs on this particular mixtape. I'm going to go ahead and give this mixtape like a 9 out of 10. It's really that damn good. Definitely one of Ludacris's best mixtapes overall, I'd have to say. Just overall, like the vivid appeal. This particular one is primary Ludacris. Definitely nailed some concepts. Just helped boister and was a great appetizer for the Release Therapy album, which was a pretty successful project also. So it's just a great 1-2 punch to kind of get together with this. The social score, I'm going to go ahead. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll go ahead and give the social score like a 9 also. I would give it a 10, but it didn't really have a single or something like that. And I feel like some of these offhanded kind of productions in terms of some of the new type fare was just kind of a disappointment. I think folks are going to see songs with Jadakiss and ODB and think that those are going to be kick-ass songs, but they really weren't. It's just kind of a poor concept for that. And then also on top of that, there just were some clumsy productions on here. Not vividly amounts of that, but just kind of the concept enough to kind of say that in terms of like some of the immediate ones I would recommend off this particular, in terms of some of the immediate new songs I would recommend in like a casual market, it just doesn't have those as heavily as like it needs to. It's not to say this is a bad project, but in terms of something like Moneymaker or Grew Up a Screw Up, some of those type pitches that were some of Ludacris's biggest hits around that time, I'd probably say the biggest, most immediate song that has the most vivid kind of appeal in like a casual sense would be Shakedown. And I'd also throw in like the Lean With It, Rock With It remix, but in terms of like the new stuff, it'd probably be Shakedown, and then possibly like Rob the Robbers, just in a more kind of gutter type sense, I'd have to suppose. But this is not very much like a commercial type project. It's a lot more grimy and gutter just within that pitch. Just kind of has a lot more rugged, kind of thuggish type appeal towards it that just doesn't really have that gloss or glimmer that it probably needs. I just think for a Ludacris project, that's kind of surprising just because he was pretty commercial at the time. But I feel like apart from Shakedown, it doesn't have it, but it's still going to get. But in terms of like a casual kind of commercial market, I'd say the biggest song would have to be Shakedown. There's just not much appeal beyond that, but it's still going to get a pretty rave score. score. I'd have to say it's a good enough concept, and this is definitely one of Ludacris's best. It's just a lot more in like a rugged type sense, I'd have to suppose. It's just kind of the concept about it. It's not very commercial, but it's just interesting enough because it does have the appeal, does have the lyricism. It's basically like Dedication 2 by Lil Wayne. I would almost say like Ludacris's version of Dedication 2 by Lil Wayne, just a little bit larger because it has 2 discs and stuff like that. But I suppose good. Social score gets a 9. In terms of the future, like Ludacris has been quiet for several years. It's been since like 2015 since he's dropped anything. He dropped like the Ludaverses mixtapes, and then he also dropped like Ludaversal from 2015. So it's a good enough concept. He said he's working on some projects, but he's been doing a number of like the Fast and Furious type movies, so that's what he's been up to. But I'd have to say he's supposedly working on some projects, but I don't know when they're going to come out. I'd have to suppose. But eventually, I will review disc 2 of this particular project, pre-release therapy, and I'm also going to get to some more mixtapes. There's yet and still a few still more left to get to, so we'll get to some of these. But this is definitely one of Ludacris's best.